Well, I'm delighted today to be speaking to Simon Walker, who's the CEO and founder of SkyeWalker Law and also the CEO of MindForce. Simon, welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Nice to see you again.
So terrific to be back in Dubai chatting to you today. We're going to talk about a couple of different things today, but firstly, let's get on to MindForce. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, MindForce is really important to me. My father committed suicide 20 years ago. I've had my own slight ins and outs on mental health, and I wanted to really give back to that and decided at the end of last year I was going to do that this year. MindForce I co-founded with a guy called Chris Hale. Chris tried to commit suicide, the police rescued him, the police rather loved his story. Sheikh Mohammed at that time decided we needed to catch up with mental health in Dubai and asked us to kind of help out. So we support the police and the Dubai Health Authority as a sort of glue in the mental health arena. We have relationships with the insurers, we have relationships with various service providers, we have relationships with the hospitals, we have relationships with the psychiatric clinics. And if someone doesn't have anywhere to go, they can come to us and we will sort them out one way or another. I think one of the important differences is we're completely income and race agnostic. And so the people we end up helping more are probably poor Indian, Filipino, Bangladeshi, Pakistani kind of worker level here who don't have health insurance, don't have all the benefits that others have. And we will find them a place and a solution to get through their mental health problems.
They phone you up or they message you, or how do they interact with you?
They do a whole lot of things. They email, they message, they WhatsApp, they find us one way or another. To be honest, I don't put my number everywhere or I'd have 1,000 calls a day, but they find us. Generally, probably more by email than anything else. And Chris takes more person-to-person calls. He's Mr. Suicide. He often goes into a hospital at 3 a.m. with someone who's cut themselves and whatever and turns them around on suicide.
Wow.
I'm Mr. Addiction. And I often get sort of quite high-performing guys who've been really successful, life's fallen to pieces, marriage fallen to pieces, jobs fallen to pieces, and they're kind of actually at their wits' end. And I have numerous ways that you turn them around, and you get them into a treatment program, you get them into an aftercare program, and save them. So, I mean, it's not the worst thing to wake up in the morning and go, I'm probably going to save a life today. It kind of makes it a bit more worthwhile. You get up and say, I'm going to make $5,000 today. Or twice a week, I can get up and go, I'm going to save a life today.
And it's all run with volunteers, is it? I mean, what's the resources like?
I've got a lovely collective of women who, there's 150 of them. They're all of mixed levels of psychiatric qualifications, some fully qualified, some just with basic training. And they provide a sort of free resource, and I'm hoping that we're going to go through a sort of training program with DHA where DHA train them, they get the DHA accreditation, and in return they commit to a certain amount of free time. Then that will bulk it up. It takes an awful lot to pull the pieces together, and it's working, but now it's working so well that the problem I've got is not enough people to perform the saving. And the other thing is nobody has given any money. Not a single person has given money. I've put $35,000 of my own money. And big investment banks, big accountancy firms, big company setup people, everybody says, oh yeah, we're gonna help you, I know. And then it goes to committee, and 3 months later it's in committee, and 4 months later it's in AML, and 6 months, and nobody's come up with anything, which is pretty disappointing. Everyone talks a good game. They want to have mental health really good in their companies, and they really care, but then they don't come up with the goodies. So I'm making that point. I could really do with some supporters, please. Thank you.
So, I mean, do you think that mental health issues are now being seen on a level playing field across the healthcare sector? Is that something that you think in the public consciousness people are acknowledging these issues and treating them with the appropriate respect?
It's gone. My interview on Dubai Eye, which 2.2 million people listen to. I explain about that, and I explain about how we in Dubai were probably a little bit slow to accept the mental health thing. And then once we did embrace it 2 years ago, we have run at it and created a really flat environment where there's no stigma. It's cool to talk about it, and there are no issues with it. It's the mental health world in Dubai is very buoyant. People are really on it, really doing things. I'm working with a Gen Z guy. I'm working with a guy who particularly pitches to the Emiratis. There's a lot of people in the zone, and I've got a good friend in San Francisco in mental health, and he says that the mental health culture in San Francisco is toxic. They don't get it. So we've weirdly, in that way, Dubai is so good at running at things. We've become almost a leader now, I think.
Did the pandemic, do you think, help accelerate that? Because it was so obvious that people were struggling and there were so many challenges that it was sort of universal acknowledgement of stress and pressure that existed through that time.
Yeah, I said in that interview that it was a perfect storm or an imperfect storm, because everybody was having problems with children, online bullying, marriage problems, cohabitation problems. Then there are every single problem came to the fore, and everyone accepted that everyone's got the issue. And then it became trendy to be able to say that you had the issue. So our wonderful English tennis player, the lady tennis player, the young lady, she said, I don't want to play because I'm suffering from mental health. It's now fine and even a little bit trendy, but not in a bad way, to be able to say I've got a problem. And one of our sort of theme expressions is just reach out. Don't worry about talking to people. Men are terrible about sharing on mental health, and I've just found, because I sort of have been through it and I get it, you can immediately engage with a guy and just get him to drop everything and all the barriers, and it's such a relief to people. So although men are very resistant to facing up to it, I think once they embrace it, they get it really very quickly and they can improve very quickly.
Interesting. And just coming to SkyeWalker Law, I mean, perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about your practice there, the sort of clients you work with, and the focus of that business.
Yeah. So I've been sort of big city law firm, Travers Smith, Mayer Brown, and so on all my life. Then I went to being head of legal for a company that was a NATO subcontractor, very profitable business. Then I worked with a lovely DIFC firm here, and one way or another I decided I needed to strike out on my own. I formed SkyeWalker Law. My daughter's name is Daisy SkyeWalker, like the Isle of Skye, SKYE. So I've borrowed her name for my law firm. It's SkyeWalker Law. And I'm in a bit of a niche because I've done sort of heavy-hitting corporate in top corporate firms in London and then in Hong Kong and with heavy-hitting US firms and then in Abu Dhabi and here, and a lot of cross-border stuff. I've kind of got a bit of a niche, I think, for very complex, big-ticket corporate transactions, M&A transactions. I've got a bit of a niche in pharma. I was the head of legal for one of the big pharma companies here. A bit of a niche in oil and gas M&A. And so it's going really well. We're acting for, at this very moment, I'm acting for a big US financial institution opening business here. I'm acting for a very, very wealthy guy who's having a succession issue and needs help with the succession issue, and that's kind of sort of strategic board advisory in some ways. I'm acting on the sale of a DIFC bank, but in that case I'm the exclusive corporate finance advisor, so I'm finding the buyers for the bank and then helping project manage the legal. We'll get external people in for that and I'll project manage it. So there I'm a corporate financier introducing deals, and that's 30% of it, finding buyers and sellers.
And what's your observations on the entrepreneurs coming to Dubai at the moment? I mean, there's a lot. I've talked to a lot of people in the last few days about just the number of inbound entrepreneurs coming and setting up businesses. Is that something that you see, or is noticeable, or what's your observation?
I think we must be a numero uno globally.
Yeah.
I really think we must be. We've done the roaming work visa arrangement. We're ahead of everybody on blockchain, cryptos, metaverse. We're ahead of we're sort of just a little bit ahead of people. We've got no tax. We've got 5% VAT. They've made the company setup much easier and much broader. You can now have the wholly owned local company, which wasn't the case. So you can have a wholly owned local company, you can have a free zone company, you can have a offshore company, any kind of structure, and there's quite a lot of competition in that world. So you can set a company up and have a visa on it for, even as low as 12,000 dirhams, which I don't think anywhere else does. A $3,000 all in, and all the company setup people are going to be hating me for this because it's really 25,000. But if you go cheap, it's not good to go cheap. You want to go middle because the cheap guys actually then add on. You've got to be a bit wise about that, but you can do it for 15, 20. And that's not the case in a lot of places. There's quite an annoying bureaucracy. There's a bit of a paper shuffling class. We haven't succeeded that well in going virtual, and everything's meant to be online, but people build in a bit of paper requirement. And that, I mean, I've been lucky enough to speak to senior people here, that is an indirect taxation. I'd rather pay, don't quote me on this, I'd rather pay 8% flat tax than have a bit of paper, bit of problem, bit of this indirect tax. And I think that's something we need to tidy up here.
And what about on the sovereign wealth fund side? I mean, what kind of activity do you see them undertaking?
Well, I can't really name it, but I was very lucky from December to June to act for one of the funkier sovereign wealth funds in Abu Dhabi on a pharma transaction, a healthcare transaction, and they were super on it, super smart. It was great. It was doing a complex private equity deal, and what that sovereign wealth fund is doing is it's carving bits of the Abu Dhabi infrastructure into different pieces that can be floated to raise money in another way. I mean, you've got the do flotation going on. You've got those big ticket flotations, but they're also grooming. They might have a company that has 3 businesses that could be split up and float as three different entities rather than one. And inevitably then you get like double your money. So they're being pretty savvy about it. I think the other point is some of the bigger ones they haven't spent all their money. They have to spend a certain amount of money, and they are looking around. They're looking around for deals. They really want deals, but they only want bigger deals. They need to offload quite a lot of money, so they only want like $200 million and above deals minimum. So I think that's 2 observations. They're very canny about what they do, but when they engage, they're super on it, and they've got super amounts of cash.
And what do you see of other countries in the GCC, Saudi, or I've been talking to other people about Qatar with the injection of investment through the World Cup and everything like that. I mean, what's your feel for other countries in the GCC and where they're at in the economic cycle versus UAE?
I don't want to upset anyone, but I think everyone must recognise that we're ahead of the curve. Saudi's running at it incredibly quickly now. It's doing great things with the belt, whatever that building is. It is, but they also had a Saudiization policy as well. PIF, the Public Investment Fund, is doing incredibly well, investing very broadly. That key Alaweed, he just rolled over his investment in Elon Musk's company only yesterday. So the Saudi lot are pretty savvy. Qatar is great, World Cup, that's wonderful for it. I don't come across them massively in business. They're doing big deals, but not really here. I don't think. I think they're doing public company deals in other jurisdictions more. In terms of international, one of the big changes has been a lot of Russian influx, mega Russian influx, a lot of money coming in. Dubai is very savvy. It takes the good oligarchs. There are good oligarchs and there are bad oligarchs, and it susses out who the good oligarchs are and welcomes them. Whereas London might have just gone, oh, oligarch, you've got to be qualitative about these analyses, I think. And then also, I think Brexit and a lot of people who used to live in 2 or 3 countries, England and European countries, that's become quite problematic. And a lot of those people are now saying, I'm going to move. I've got, numerous friends who've done this. I'm going to move my base to Dubai. And then it's much easier for me to spend a bit of time in England, spend a bit of time at the place in the south of France, and be in Dubai. And that working visa, the roaming visa, gives people the flexibility to do that. So we've been really clever. We've been clever to attract just the right people.
And Fintech is one of the sectors locally that's interesting, very highly innovative. What do you see of the Fintech sector here in Dubai?
It's very savvy, very hot, very good. So on the sort of crypto thing, we're ahead of the curve. On the blockchain thing, we're ahead of the curve. Binance moved their base of operations here to DWTC. Actually, it's opened in Bahrain as well, and they're being quite savvy, but we've taken a bit of the Binance business here. Metaverse, Sheikh Hamdan wants to be the leading metaverse country. He wants us to have a $38 billion metaverse by the end of 2030. So we're savvy on that. But one of my offices is in DIFC in a particular building. And if you go to the second floor of that, where the fintechs are, it's extraordinary. You walk around and there's all these names which are household names in London. You've got sort of people like Yap and various others doing online virtual banking. It's very, very buoyant, very strong here, I would say.
What's your assessment on the metaverse side? Is it something that you see factoring through to real business, that you see real investment flows? Or
it will do, but it's early days. They had the big metaverse conference about a month ago, and they metaversed it, and so they had people wandering around in the metaverse, and it's a bit clumpy. But one of the things I want to do for MindForce is create a metaverse. That's trademarked, by the way. Nobody is copying that. But wouldn't it be beautiful if children aged 19 or 17 who are used to online stuff could have an avatar and go into a metaverse, and there's a doctor there, and there's something beautiful there, and there's some music there, and there's some friends there. And so they're he's got very visionary plans for what he's going to do. But the metaverse that they've created at the moment, it's genius, because all the government departments, they're there, and you potter into your metaverse and you go and deal with this permit or that approval, and you can, but it's a little bit clunky at the moment.
And COP28 is going to be coming to the UAE, and that I think probably will drive a lot of conversations about sustainable investing and all sorts of discussion and debate. Is that something that you think will be on the minds of the companies you deal with in terms of ESG investing, sustainable investing, or is that just not something that really is something that's high up the priority list for the clients you deal with?
Contrary to what people might think, because we have a predominantly oil economy in Abu Dhabi, a lot of people don't realise, of course, that Dubai doesn't have any oil. So everything in Dubai has been built by being clever and by having the best airline, being the biggest ports owner. So we have to be savvy on things because we don't have unlimited money. Although there is the nice supportive brother cousin in Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi, Mubadala has been ahead of the game on renewables, technology, creating batteries that work for long-term storage, way before anybody else. I wouldn't like to speak for them. I kind of think in my mind that Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth funds together have sort of gone, well, look, we're really lucky we've got all the oil. Let's spend 10% of that giving it back in renewables, green energy. Sharjah has just done an amazing, completely first gas version of renewables and waste to energy plants, and we're the leader in that as well. We are, and you could, people might go, well, they should do, because they've got all that oil and they're polluters, but ADNOC is really focusing on gas big time now, and really focusing on green energy as its core business over the oil business, the gas business, and the LPG business. So I really there is a caring and responsible culture in Dubai on all matters. Just as I've talked to you about mental health, I think in giving back for the lucky break on the oil and gas, we're developing everything to help the rest of the world. And people might not realize, okay, so Mubadala is spending a lot of money on battery technology, but of course everything turns around that, because you can't do solar in a 1,000 square kilometre solar park in the middle of the desert between Abu and Saudi without batteries that store it or lines that transmit it, or solar that doesn't burn out, the panels that don't burn out on a sunny day. So you've got to do the technology development to make these things make a difference for everyone. And all of that kind of thing is quite under the radar, but it's complicated and it's expensive, and it's been being done for 10 years.
Well, thank you, Simon. I mean, it's been terrific to talk to you today, and we look forward to sharing this interview.
Thank you.
The latest technical content delivered through global conversations with professionals for professionals.